My name's Chris.
And I'm Kristie.
This is the Washing Up Podcast, and this isn't Masterchef Australia. No, it's not. It's not the Great Australian Bake Off. No,
it's
not the
even
Great British
better.
Bake Off. It's even better. It's Great Canadian Baking Show, and why would I be calling it Baking Show and not doing my usual curmudgeonly thing and calling it Great Canadian Bake Off? Well, there's only one reason we could be doing that.
Yes.
We've got someone very important on the end. Marike, the executive producer of Great Canadian Baking Show. How are we going?
Hi, how are you? I'm actually the series producer.
Yes.
But I highly respect that you have remained true to our show title, which is the Great Canadian Baking Show. Thank you so much.
No, it's really easy to do, and it's our pleasure. We would never do anything other than refer to it as that. So,
is that your nose growing there, my love?
Do you have any questions for the person who's very strongly connected to Canadian Bake Off?
You couldn't resist.
No,
you had to get it in there.
Yeah, it's an absolute delight to be able to get to have a conversation with you. It's something that it's been very popular in Australia, despite not officially airing anywhere in the country.
I mean, we have been, hitting up local outlets to say, please bring Canadian to our screen. So hopefully we'll get it one day. Yeah, it'd be great. But until then, yeah.
But
it just launched here on Netflix.
Yep.
And the first 2 seasons are airing on Netflix Canada, and it's like so many people I think who didn't quite realize that it was on or didn't know about it have really jumped on the bandwagon, and there's a lot of people are really into it. It's like perfect viewing for everyone stuck at home in their pajamas kind of thing.
And I think from what I just saw, they've just released season 3 as well. So season 3's just hit.
Yes, I did see
all the
very
season
excited.
3 bakers have been very excited by, you can see me on Netflix.
Okay, I didn't realize. I know it's on there's also Gem, which is the CBC streaming app, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. And
we can recommend CBC Gem.
CBC Gem is great. Really great stuff. And yes, so that's good. We're on Netflix, we're on Gem, we're coming out of every streaming service, which is great.
So Aussies, what we need to do is just start a petition on Twitter, on Insta, all the medias, by pigeon, just getting down to Netflix.
Whatever is the best way to get
have it in. I will talk to one of my friends there, see if he's got any pull. Probably
that's right. That's right.
To see.
Kristie has a friend who created the oscillating fan for Netflix.
So, because at Christmas time, you know how they put up the fire for to have the background. Well, in Australia, that's very inappropriate because of all the bushfires and the heat and stuff. So he created oscillating fan to have in the background, as more of a cool alternative.
Actually on Netflix Australia, so I think nationally. So it's become, as I said, even though not being shown here, like a cult favourite among Australian audiences. I think the reason we sort of think it's become a bit of a cult favourite here is it's probably the closest in ethos and style to what Australian Bake Off is. Mm-hmm. Have you, before going into it, how much of the other versions obviously had you guys sort of looked at before you went ahead with yours?
Well, okay, before we started shooting, I watched every single episode of the British version. Yep. I had a few episodes of the Australian version, maybe, but I think at the time, because that was in 2017, so I think there was maybe only 1 season available. And I think you guys changed format a little bit.
Yeah, we don't count the original first season. Nobody in Australia counts it.
Right. So that was my only reference at the time. So I actually watched everything of the first season, more or less. But the other thing was that I did get to I don't know if this is blasphemous. I did get to go to Mecca. I did go to the British tent.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So it was amazing for us to do that because, when they Love Productions, it has a wonderful package for producers and it's all, here's how you do it and all of that. And you have the shows. But the actual kind of, okay, how are we actually doing this on a day-to-day basis? it was really invaluable to go to their set. And I think, I was able to kind of really absorb the vibe in their tent and all the kind of energy they created on the show that you could never figure out from a consultant coming to you or reading it in their paperwork. It just kind of, how did they get the show to be the way it was on those long shooting days? So I did get to, with my executive producer, Kathy James, we got to go to one day of their shoot when they had the new hosts, Noel and Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
It was also like the hottest day in the UK, 1945. So it was like, everyone was like semi-delirious, and because there's no air conditioning in their tent at all. And they were all like, people were just like pouring sweat and stuff. It was great. But I learned a lot. That was really the biggest, the biggest learning experience that I had was just being on their set and seeing how they did things. And so we were really able to hit the ground running on season 1 and kind of found our feet, because if you've talked to other producers, day 1, season 1 is nothing short of a nightmare.
Well, to be honest, like, we were watching it, you wouldn't have known that we knew it was the first episode, first season, but it was beautifully executed, and it's just gotten better since then. Like, I've really enjoyed the mix of bakers you've gotten on, and like the hosts, even like with the progression and stuff of hosts and judges, it's always had that beautiful spirit. So, kudos to you guys for creating something just so wonderful to watch. I'm really happy that more people are going to get to see it now, like being stuck at home. And, it's on more platforms, so they're able to see it. And I reckon baking levels are going to go up. Like, it's just, we're going to be seeing a lot more good bakes.
I mean, and I mean, you are then providing a public service, because, around the world, as we know, when everyone went into quarantine, everyone decided they were a baker and went and bought flour. So there's probably a lot of really poor quality baking going on out there. The show can help to raise the level of.
Yes, exactly. And it's funny because when I heard your interview with Nicole, and she talked about her relationship with her culinary producer, I burst out laughing because I have the same relationship back and forth with our culinary producer, Mel, and our feed is all about, look at these things that are on Instagram, and she wants to judge them all. And anyway, it's great.
You just wake up hungry.
We have very similar relationships with our culinary producers. So
it's kind of handy then to be like in that close lockstep with the culinary producers, so that the shell of that show comes back to baking, and is primarily, and it's where I think a lot of other shows that are food shows struggle, because they have food, but food is part of this voyage into this other drama they're trying to get into. Whereas with all of the versions of Bake Off or the baking show around the world, what you tend to get is the food is the star. The bakers are the things that sort of push that. I mean, and as Nicole talked about, love the bakers, love the bakes. That was her sort of mantra that she had. And the bakers are that conduit for that quality of food. It's not so much about what's the drama we can have. It's how is this food going to relate to people at home? And so I think that relationship you were talking about is paramount.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of ways, what is, there's a lot of food shows that we both know and love, this is me on a plate and that kind of thing.
It's on the dish.
But I feel that a lot with the baking, I really feel that, the way that the way that they bake and how they decorate their things, the bakers really do express who they are in their baking, and they really do have a personality that comes out in those bakes. And I think that's kind of where that falling in love thing happens, because you kind of meet a sort of odd, quirky character, and yet they make these amazingly delicious and beautiful handcrafted croissants just oozing with butter and jam, and you just want to get in there.
I was about to say you can say Jude, it's okay.
like, you know, I was thinking Jude, and I was thinking of Jodie and all of like her Four Seasons tree, and James and his little electric like solar panel gingerbread house.
Yeah.
And Linda, just like she was everyone's grandma in, you know, baking.
Yeah.
So how much fun is it to get to go and like find these bakers, and sort of what sort of things do you tend to look for when you're looking at the bakers?
You know, this is the thing that's really interesting about this casting process is we really don't go into casting with a checklist. You know, again, a lot of shows need to have a villain. I mean, it's changing a lot. I think in the past 4 or 5 years, the reality show casting is really changing and really becoming more fluid and flexible. And I think, you know, a show like Bake Off and all our spin-offs, it's kind of leading the charge in some ways in having people who really you wouldn't see them on any other TV show.
They're just too nice.
Like they're just, you know, they're like somebody next door, right? And that, as you say, like the lovely grandma, or, you know, the kind of absent-minded professor, like the people are just, you know, or the, you know, the artist who's the stay-at-home mom, like, you know, just people who they just haven't had the spotlight put on them, and they wouldn't necessarily want the spotlight on them, but they have a skill and a passion, and that's what we're trying to uncover when we get all our applicants, is we're trying to find who's this sort of like regular Joe who's a real craftsperson, a real, you know, someone with curiosity and ambition and creativity who, you know, blows your mind with flavors and techniques and all of, you know, we want the whole package, right? So
and we've seen that, I think, over the 3 series so far. I think we've seen like the differences. We've seen a couple of series where you've had bakers sort of that were very equal, and then a couple of them have sort of emerged through the pack, and sort of you can see their skills developing as their confidence picks up as well. And confidence, I think, is a big thing that all of the baking shows do for the bakers. Is very that they're in a lot of other formats, it sort of crushes their spirit a little bit with the judging. The way the judging in the bake-off shows tend to work is it's more about boosting and uplifting and pointing out the confidence of those sorts of things. Celebrating.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that Bake Off allows for, even though it's got a shorter run than all of the other shows, is it allows for growth and development. So maybe can sort of how have you seen that from your perspective, taking over and sort of building this thing up from the ground up?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, because the thing is, it is because you can see it over the course of those episodes, because everything's kind of compressed into that 40-minute, 44-minute window. Whereas, you know, for us, that was a long 4-hour bake, and we sit there for that 4-hour bake. So it's
I'm always bemused when I come home to like cook 3 different things in 40 minutes, and I'm there for 4, 5, 6 hours, still not producing anything.
That's us in the tent waiting for pastry week. But I think what you see, it's a slow burn. Like just like how you get into the show, it's a slow burn, and baking and seeing that progress and seeing them develop their confidence is a slow burn, and that they, you know, all of our little bakers are like a bit like butterflies, you know, they all kind of come in and they're not sure, and they, you know, as they gain confidence and experiment and try and you know, they practice a lot, they get some, you know, feedback as they're practicing a little bit, they get support, but all the ideas are theirs and all the experimentation is theirs, and you know, sometimes things work and sometimes things don't, and they learn from it, and it's the ones that can really pick themselves up and adapt, because baking in the tent is not at all like baking at home. and the ones that can adapt to the tent are the ones who do well.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask a question there relating to that, because we've talked to obviously a lot of the Australian bakers and obviously Nicole as well. And the setup within, look, we call it the pavilion. I'm just going to call it the pavilion because
it's just so we
easier
can
for us.
Delineate.
It's easier for us in our minds. The tent for you, but the pavilion.
Okay.
So
I would really like to see like little yellow flags on top of the tent, you know, just to maybe some jousting at the front.
Make it a real tent. Just in terms of, because Nicole, when she was on, talked about the setup of Australia, and we learnt the horrible, horrible truth that
the shed is actually a tent.
The shed is actually a tent. It just looks like a shed, but it's actually a tent with like corrugated iron around the outside of it.
Yeah.
The setup for what you do in terms of your pavilion slash tent.
Just call it the tent.
Okay, the tent. Okay, the tent.
We're good hosts.
The tent. So we've talked to a couple of Australian bakers, and the thing that they commented on was the floor in Australia is very spongy and bouncy. And because the ovens all work on propane, the temperatures can be a bit interesting at times, the first couple of times they bake in the oven. So just out of curiosity, sort of the setup that you've got there, is it a similar sort of temporary structure in the way it's run there, or?
Yeah, when we're not there, that's just an open field.
Yeah. Wow.
The interesting part about the show and the grounds is that our permitting, or how we shoot, is we're in partnership with the City of Toronto, because the tent is actually on Toronto Parklands, but that backs on to the Canadian Film Centre, which which is a big kind of educational institute, and they have outbuildings and all of that. So our production team uses the outbuildings of the Canadian Film Centre for our control room and the green room and wardrobe and lunch rooms. We use all those spaces, and but the tent itself is built on parklands. So it's really the filming it, and it's right in the city. It's really not far. We do a good job. Our drones kind of hide the buildings that are just over the hedge there.
Very
another similarity to Australia.
We know where it is. It's
but when you're in there, it's really magical. Like, it really is like summer camp, and you know, culinary team drives around little golf carts, and everyone, you know, has walkie-talkies. It's just, you know, it's really wonderful, and it's on those parklands. So there are always cardinals. You know, I like to always put cardinals.
I love the cardinals. I live for those. It's pretty.
There was I think the season 1 bakers thought, you know, had the cardinals as a good luck charm. Like, oh, we didn't see a cardinal today. It's gonna be a bad day in the tent. You know? They had that, and so there are cardinals and hawks flying by, and sometimes people have seen a deer in the mornings and things like that. It's really wonderful. And but that tent is a temporary structure. We are not on propane. I think there's a generator. You're starting to ask me technical questions that I don't. But no, we're on a huge generator, and there's, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into running the electrical to the tent, because it's a big deal. The thing too is that we're in an open field, and we're susceptible to lightning and storms, and we've been shut down in the past. There's an episode in season 1 where it was pouring rain, and we lost power. We lost power to the tent.
Is that a problem?
When the tortillas, we were so thankful though, because it was tortillas in the oven. So it's like, that's mine. You know what? They'll keep cooking, and if it goes off, it'll be okay. If it had been anything else, we would have been in real trouble. We would have had to restart the bake. If it had been anything else, like cookies or anything, we would have had to restart the bake. So we got lucky that day, because we were down for probably well over an hour, because when you get lightning, then everything has to shut down, and you have to turn everything off for at least half an hour before another lightning strike. Anyway, it's a whole thing, because we are more or less shooting outside.
I'm assuming that the loss of power was also the excuse that was given for the creme caramels. I have teased so many of them mercilessly about that. I have to mention the creme caramels. Have you ever seen Bruno react like that?
No. That I don't know what happened. I have no idea, but they all lost their mind. Like I don't know. How those guys blew it so bad. I don't know.
It was the way that, first of all, they all looked at each other halfway through as if to say, this isn't happening. Let's just run with it.
No, you know what happened? All the Cardinals left the parkland that day. They just cursing this place.
It was the International Cardinal Convention.
Yep.
And they were all out that day, and it was over.
And then no luck to be had.
It was the way that, like, all the bakers looked at each other as if to say, yeah, this isn't happening. Fine, let's whatever. And then when Bruno came back in, it was just the laughter as he walked back in going, guys, seriously?
That was not, when they come in to the tent and see those bakes, they have not seen anything. That is the first time they see anything, because we are like militaristic about keeping them out of the tent. During the technical, and when they came in, they were a little bit mortified. So,
and it's one of the things that makes all the versions of Bake Off so awesome, I think, is because the reactions are genuine. Like, there's not practice that, do that one again, come back to the event, and I'll be shocked again. It's very genuine, the reactions that the other bakers have, the other contestants have towards each other, and the judges.
Yeah, and the hosts as well. Just that. Yeah. The genuineness and authenticity that runs through baking shows is amazing. So something I just wanted to bring up is I kind of go back 2 conversations ago in terms of development of bakers and stuff, is seeing what they're doing now, like Anne-Marie, teaching kids in hospital to bake. It warms my soul. I mean, she's also a big Tea Party fan, I wanted to come. I went to a salon session with just Jeff Martin in someone's garage up in the Blue Mountains here in Sydney, and she's like, "Oh, I really want to do that." So, is that something that you had anticipated, or was that like a surprise byproduct of all these things that the bakers went on to do?
Yeah, I think it's totally a surprise. I think that they are probably surprised themselves, because I think their experience of being on the show is an absolutely unique experience. I don't think any of them anticipate the friendships they're going to form. I mean, these guys, it's incredible. After the first episode, they're all hugging each other goodbye, and we're looking at each other. Like they've become like such good friends over 2 days, and so, but I think all of it's really genuine, and they really find kindred spirits in the tent, and the emotions and all of that. It's all genuine, and I think that they're just a lot of them are just genuinely kind people, and they realize, I can do something, and I have a skill, and I'm going to give back, and I think that's absolutely lovely. Yeah, I don't take credit for it though.
No. It really is one of the beautiful byproducts of a TV show. Like, we can see when celebrities, make it on a TV show, and then they go off and do charitable things for the world. But when someone's on a reality cooking show, it's not necessarily the same platform. I mean, and it's different again, because Bake Off isn't one of the ones where you win like $250,000 to go and start your culinary dream. It's there purely for the
they need
acknowledgement.
Yeah, they need a cake tray.
Yeah,
that's really what happens.
It's a cake plate.
Exactly.
And flowers. But I think the things they get are the intangibles. They have lifelong friends, and they're part of a community that I think they're all friends together. All the seasons.
And that's something.
Friends.
Well, not even just all the seasons. Something we've seen that's been absolutely lovely and delightful is that a lot of the Canadian bakers have sort of become really good friends with the Australian bakers.
Right.
And that's something that we've sort of watched develop, and it's absolutely beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
But they're sort of sending messages back and forward and trading different recipes.
And I believe Robert was teaching, was it Anne-Marie's?
Yeah, it was Anne-Marie.
His chocolate sculpting roses, and just this is what we need. We need a UN of bakers. Imagine if the bakers were running the world. like this COVID-19 stuff would have been like nipped in the bud.
Because we'd all be in quarantine all the time.
Baking.
Exactly. We'd only be going outside to share bakes.
Yeah.
That's right. And to buy more flour.
Yeah, and to buy more flour. I did see in Canada, the major producer of flour has had to resort to white bags of flour as opposed to their traditional yellow.
Wow.
So, and they've had to put out a thing going, don't worry, it's really us. Don't worry about the fact that it's like not yellow. It's actually it's not contraband flour. This isn't black market stuff. This is actually us. We just can't produce the bags fast enough. Yeah. So, but I think that watching the development of the bakers and the development of the seasons too, and have you seen a difference in confidence from like those bakers that were on that first season, sort of that trial balloon sort of season, to the ones that came in season 3 in terms of feeling a bit more assured of what the show is?
It's interesting. I don't think people really understand what the competition is until they get into the tent. And it doesn't matter because it's just so abstract and so like, I don't know, like how would they know what a reality competition is in a tent in a field with 10 cameras in your face? Like, how would you know how to
you don't normally have an hour and a half timer with like somebody hovering over your shoulder where you have to yell out at them when you open the oven.
Yeah, or somebody's constantly asking, what are you doing now? What is now?
That bake seems to be splitting and falling apart. Tell us about it. The only part that might be familiar is people that have children might have, for example, somebody appear over their shoulder and start eating their offcuts. and that might be the only thing that, and it's been good to see that the consistency across hosting that you've had is that the hosts understand their role is to 1, encourage and develop, 2, to nurture, 3, to add levity to a moment of sort of horror possibly, and 4, eat what's left.
Yeah. I think, we've been so lucky with the hosts that we've had and they're really in some ways, I always think of them as they're kind of the viewer on the sidelines, right? And they're kind of, as you say, right, they're there for fun but they're there to hold hands and wipe tears and to really be a part of the competition. They truly are, they really get into it and they're really invested in how the bakers do. It's being in the tent and being part of the competition is all consuming, right? Being and everybody who's part of production understands the competition in a way that it's way more complex than you could ever have on TV. But because of that, everybody's really into it. So we've been like extremely lucky with the talent that we've had in the tent.
It's a highly nuanced role that I think it's very underrated by a lot of people in terms of just how difficult that role, because you've got to be able to turn on a dime and you've got to have that ability to both be really humorous and like sensitive all at once. And it's something that I think all of the versions, the main versions of Bake Off that we talk about, Canadian, British and Australian, it's something they've nailed absolutely perfectly all the way through. Is the judges just have to have that right balance. It doesn't work, for example, if you've got something akin to Name Something, nailed it, where you've got the judges in there and it's not quite as sympathetic. It's more a hearty ha-ha sort of thing when things fall apart. Whereas there's that level of laughter and humour, but then when something falls apart, there's that really warm, you can do this. We've watched you do. You've got this. What can we do? Calm. Take them out for a breather. Those sorts of things.
Yeah. So I was, I had a question. Hold on. Oh, yes. Well, have you gained any baking skills over the course of the show? Like, is that...
You know what? I will say yes. I also work. I also worked on MasterChef Canada, so I did a number of seasons. I think we're going into the 7th season, and out of those 7, I think I worked on 5 of the seasons. And I'm not working on the final one because of the overlap here with the 2. But and I worked with an editor who he would try everything. He would make pasta and he would do all these things. I was kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. But but with baking, I don't know. And also my son is becoming more interested in it. So to answer your question, yes, but also I have more of a baking background. Like my Nana used to bake and my mom baked. And so not to the level of anybody on the show, but it's just something I'm familiar with and sort of know a bit more. So yeah, you know what? And with this COVID thing now, my son's he's making pasta and we're doing stuff. So
he's keeping you all fed.
I just like to think that kind of like, nurturing him and go, see, if you want to be on one of these shows, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Have you practiced?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really not grooming him to be on a reality show. It's more for life skills.
Just imagining all these like tiger mom bakers out there, like for them.
You can do it.
Maybe. I'm really not any form of tiger mom at all. I'm like the opposite.
So one of the things that we really liked sort of getting to talk to Nicole about, and you've sort of hinted before about your relationship with your culinary producer, obviously.
Yeah.
The building of the matrix and the building of the sort of baking matrix.
Which we call a grid.
Your grid, yes.
We call it the grid.
How much fun is it to put that thing together?
You know what? It's great. I start working on it the minute I'm in the edit suite on one season. I'm already starting to build stuff for the next season and thinking things through. It's a lot of fun to do, and it's so great to have 10 seasons of the British show and 4 or 5 seasons of the Australian show to reference, and then I'm digging into like what do they do in Ireland and how they
soda bread,
soda bread and potatoes.
Yeah. Exactly. And then also trying to do stuff that feels Canadian. We have a very, very multicultural society here, and people are very aware of that. And it's always, the thing is, the British show tends to be very, very British. And so I can't take everything they've got. And, so we're always trying to adapt, and we're also always trying to come up with outside the box bakes. I think the sandwich cake, if you might remember that.
Oh, I remember that.
We will always remember the lobsters being shipped in from PEI.
Like the looks that we got, that when we pitched the idea, where they were like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "This is a fantastic challenge. It will either be revolting or amazing."
And the answer was yes.
It was
a bit of both. I think it really, we're trying to just get stuff that's colorful and outside the box, and
add more caribou.
Slab cakes.
Save the caribou. God.
More
Grace the caribou.
More Grace.
I think that goes down as one of my favorites ever.
I was going to ask about that, but Grace the caribou. Grace became a massive cult icon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, as she should be. She's the last of her herd. Come on.
Exactly. And with someone like Liam in your corner, how can you fail? The man carried a turkey on his back. I think that the way that you sort of have designed the other benefit you do have, and obviously, Rochelle's fantastic and so's Kyla, but Bruno.
Yeah.
Like that man and that technique and his abilities. That obviously helps you to be able to build bakes when you can look at Bruno and go, so
what have you got for us today?
What do you got?
Yeah, Bruno's great. I think if you called up Central Cast and you said, okay, I need a French baking judge, you'd get Bruno, right? Like it would be great. He's great. But he is like, he's so lovely, and he's so like genuinely kind and genuinely enthusiastic and supportive of the bakers. Like he loves it when he gets to taste stuff he's never tried before. So that's a tip to anybody applying and thinking about being on the show, is to really don't be afraid, and don't be the same. Vanilla and raspberry, we've seen a lot.
Check out some Australian native ingredients. There's some good stuff going around. You know, got a lot of like finger lines and stuff. There you go. Just helping you across the seas, fellow Commonwealthers.
And I'm on it.
And so one of the things, and the reason
Saskatoon berries.
Don't mention Saskatoon. Look, okay, I have to ask the question: are they real? I am convinced they're not. I don't care what anyone else says. I'm convinced they are.
Yeah, it's a real thing. They're kind of sour, not very juicy blueberries.
Thank you for the not very juicy blueberries, because somebody.
I'm from the east. I'm from the eastern side of the country, so I'm gonna poo-poo Saskatoon berries.
Because somebody, good, thank you. Because somebody maybe from one of your series, let's call them Megan S, continues to try to promote the idea that they're wonderful and keeps on threatening to send me some in a jam.
Listen, you should try them. I tried some of those ones that she had. Didn't blow my mind, but her pie was nice. Her pie was good.
I can imagine that was nice, but so this sort of leads us in a little bit to, like, we'd obviously hoped to get to speak to you earlier, but the reason why we waited was because we wanted to wait for the good news.
Yeah.
Which is that you're back.
Yes. Oh my goodness. It was a long time coming. But we're really thrilled to be back. And in fact, at the end of the day, it's good that we had a delay, because if we would be shooting in less than a month's time. It would have been impossible. We would have been shut down with the tent halfway built. So in some ways it's good. I'm hoping for the best. We just basically have open casting. We're trying to do things in chunks, and we've opened casting, and we're reaching out to every little baking club across the country, and trying to get people to nominate the best bakers they know, because they can reap the benefits of the practicing. And
would you like pies?
I've got an expat Canadian friend here in Australia, Valerie, who I could
send her over.
I'll just send her over. I'll just
send her over.
Orders again.
She won't make it. So that was I was going to ask about casting in the time of COVID. I mean, how are you planning on working that out?
Yeah, well, this was like this was a giant brainstorm. We had to figure things out fairly quickly and pivot. But we are going to do what I heard through the grapevine, but I don't know if it's been confirmed, that I think the British show has had to do this also. They've been delayed and they've had to do this also. Is we are going to do virtual casting.
Yep.
And we'll do like a Zoom call and one-on-one baking auditions with people who, like, we're gonna have a few more layers in terms of phone calls and discussions before we go into the one-on-one baking.
Either a Postmates or an Uber sort of food delivery service, I'm assuming.
Uber sled.
Although it's not winter there now. We're getting winter. Oh. No winter. We have spring. Stop talking about winter. It's over.
I might bring it back.
Just because you have real winters.
2020 is so fucking unpredictable. And going to
who knows?
Who knows?
That's it. But in some ways, the interesting thing about the audition process is that everything will be visual, which is how viewers experience the bakes on the show.
Yep.
So we have to see what these bakes look like, and in terms of people applying, they really need to load us up with photos.
Yeah.
We need to see what they make.
Excellent.
So a couple of questions off the back of that, because we did put an open call out.
We did,
and we got some
people listened.
They did. I know, it was crazy.
Okay.
So Lachlan asked my question: if we applied already for the show, and let's say we applied the first day with too much excitement, can we go and reapply or add to our answers, asking for a friend? I want to know the backstory personally, but
you know what? I don't know if we can reopen that. I feel like once it's been closed,
it's closed. Yeah.
But I'll see if there's an email. I'll see if I can track down an email or something if they really feel
they need to add something.
They need to like just tone down their excitement and butterflies. Just breathe.
Look, our casting people go through every single application. And as I said, we are not going into anything without, we're not going into it with preconceived ideas of what we're looking for, right?
Which sort of goes to the next question. We've talked about this before, but just to sort of reinforce that, Rachel asked, what are the producers really looking for? An already established baker or a mix of spunk and attitude with moderate skill? Hint, hoping it's the latter. Greatest question we've ever had asked.
Yeah, we're looking for that. We want to see range. That would be the one big thing. If you only make cupcakes, I don't know that this is the right show for you, because you know, we have a cake week, we have a bread week, we have a pie week, so we're going to ask you to make pies, we're going to ask you to make bread. So if you are someone who doesn't have a lot of experience with pies or pastry or whatever, that's not the end of the world, but we would be looking for someone who is curious about those things, who has time to devote to practicing to those things, and who's willing to experiment. So that would be what we would be looking for. And even if that's not on your application, we can fish that out. And, you know, if there's something interesting and spunky about you, then we can find that and we can talk about that. But I would say the biggest thing would be range. And we do get, you know, and there are a lot of people who've just started baking with COVID, and some people are maybe naturally gifted in that front. But if you're only working on macarons or only working on cupcakes, this year might not be your year, but keep on trucking, man. Like, you might get in.
It's been something that we've sort of, from the bakers over the different versions we've spoken to, the one thing they've all said is before they went on, they watched a lot of previous versions of the show, not to memorize bakes, but just to see the range of what they needed to be able to do and work out where they thought they might need to keep upskilling.
Mm-hmm.
And so something that I sort of, from an amateur sort of point of view outside of it, but having watched a lot of it, the thing I'd sort of say to people is watch previous series, not just of like one, of as many series as you can find to see the range.
And if you're passionate, you know, make time for that passion. It's a show that is about passion, but also about skills. So if skill is applying stuff. And I say this as a person who is not very good at applying herself to things. But I can just see that it's, you know, from like befriending some bakers and seeing what they do, it's just they don't go into a bake looking for perfection. They go into a bake looking to develop. And that's how the genius comes forward. Like Andrea, for example, like her color just always blows my mind.
I mean, her abilities as well, especially as a mermaid. Without permanent access to ovens underwater. It's remarkable what that woman's been able to accomplish. Just colour and vibrancy and baking and still being able to be a full-time mermaid. It's impressive. Another question that we got, and this is something that we know a bit of, but obviously you can speak to, is, are the contestants allowed to use their recipes during challenges? Yes. So I think from what we've sort of, it's the only thing that you're setting purely is the technical. And everything else is just the theme, and they've got to work to that theme, but it's their recipe, isn't it?
Correct. And the ones who do well are the ones who have a plan on paper and follow it. And, you know, we've had people who have their bakes timed out minute by minute. I mean, it's always the ones like Kristie or
yes,
you know, what's happening? I don't know, you know, so but they plan it out really well. And, you know, we're there, essentially it's their competition. And it's their bake to lose, because we're there and our culinary team is there to support them in whatever they need. We get the ingredients for them. We supply the equipment for them. If they run out of a whisk and they need a whisk, they go, oh, get you a whisk. You know, whatever they need, our culinary team is there to help them make that bake as good as they can make it. And sometimes people are too ambitious.
We don't need that 600-year-old cured Parma ham.
You know, they go down in flames, but That's okay. You know, it tasted good.
It is actually one of the things I always enjoy watching with all the versions of Bake Off, and I've said obviously in Canadian, no exception, is the way that bakers, in the first couple of weeks, because they're not used to this timed sort of, and again, baking a lot of the time is inspiration based, and so they'll set out to do something and there'll be 10 minutes to go in a challenge and they'll have now set themselves 8 things to do. And suddenly there'll be this moment of realization with 10 minutes to go, I'm not going to get any of this done. Okay, how do I make it look good? What do I do? And how do I finish this? And the way that they manage to scramble something finished, because 9.5 times out of 10, they get something up and they manage to finish something. And it's just incredible to watch that scramble for the first few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've ever had one challenge where people have not finished. That has never happened where someone showed up with an empty plate. And luckily. But, you know, and that gets back to that idea of being able to adapt, right? Because you can have a great plan. It can go sideways, but if you're not able to pivot and adapt, that's where you're going to be in trouble, right? And so it's the ones who can pivot, and even though it's 10 minutes to go and they've got a lumpy turd on the plate,
it's there.
Off the flowers and get some sugar work on there, and boom.
Just bury it in something.
Just get a cardinal to balance on it precariously. Just
cardinals fly it in, a la Mary Poppins. It's just
the power of the cardinal. You cannot underestimate it.
It is a very important thing. I think the other underrated group of people within, and especially with some bakers, and I'm not going to name James personally, is that team that comes through and has to clean after the bakes. I mean, I assume
they're the highest paid member of the.
Before you get to the whole judging and the setup, how rapid does that team have to clean that tent?
Very fast. Very, very fast.
And how many hazmat suits were used for, James?
That was a big production, but you know, this was the thing, is that we had Linda, whose station was spotless. So, you know, when you have a James, you know, it's all in the balance.
The cleaner for Linda's walks over and goes, I've got nothing to do.
I'll help you.
James' cleaner's like, I need you.
Yeah. Exactly. We always need a few Lindas who have a spotless station at the end of the day.
It does help you, but I've spoken about this, and James is clearly my Patronus in there. His just ability to throw things for miles is epic.
He was good in the holiday special, though.
He was much better, and we credited him on the podcast for being a lot neater than he'd ever been before.
He did great.
It was a beautiful thing to see. One of the bakers I get asked about from Canadian more than any other, and I have to bring him up, is Andre. Yeah. Every baker we spoke to from that series told us the same thing. They said they just look at Andre baking and go, how? Just what was like watching here, especially like watching Bruno's reaction to his patisserie and his all of those sorts of things. And especially for a first series, how was that for you, just watching that sort of play out and going, I've got gold?
Yeah, I mean, Andre is a very, very, very skilled. Well, Andre's very, very skilled at every single thing he does.
Yes, he is.
He's a real Renaissance man.
Single-handedly sailing to Australia. Anyway,
Renaissance man. We got to semi-final, and he talked about how he had been an astronomer or something. We're like, what? We didn't even know. And then, you know, he's extremely talented. He's the kind of person who, I think when he sets his mind to something, he's going to do it, and he's going to be the best at it. And we knew he was a skilled baker when we cast him. I don't know that we could have predicted his skill level. Unfortunately for the other bakers, like when you get somebody in there like that, well, watch out. I mean, it's kind of over, you know. That was our biggest challenge, was making 8 episodes of TV that didn't give away the outcome in the first episode.
And that was without being too obvious that you're trying to hide him. Just cover on the sheet.
Was absolutely marvelous. You know, his checkerboard cake with the crown. I mean, it was beautiful. It was a work of art. So, having someone of that skill level really gave the show so much legitimacy and so much credibility. And I think he's a very inspiring person. I think for home bakers, he's really inspiring.
And it also then links into something which is another key part of that sort of baking show ethos across the board, which is just that camaraderie within the tent and the closeness, as you mentioned before, of those bakers. But it's something that, again, is different from a lot of food shows. They are genuinely joyous at what everyone else produces and the quality. And there's never I'm so angry they did that, or I'm upset that they did that, and why wasn't mine? It's always, that's amazing. Can I have more of that? How did you do? And there's sharing of ideas. And we've talked often as well about just that level of help and assistance. So outside of the technical, obviously, when they're in other challenges going, you need a hand, what can I help you with? It's something that is a genuinely bake-off trait.
Is there any times you go, no, you're helping too much? Just step away.
During the technicals, we were in there policing the rules. But no, during their bakes, the looseness of the show, of people kind of milling about and having tea, and that's all what's happening. We're not, we make a tea station and tell them you can go have tea if you have time.
And you also put sun lounges out on the deck. I mean, that is inspired.
Just the fact you've got a deck.
We have a deck. Well, it's mostly the crew that sits there, though.
We don't have a deck.
And their cocktails.
We have sometimes we have morning meetings out there. We always have a morning meeting with the crew, and so it's sometimes out on the sun deck. But all of that is real. We don't have to encourage it that much. I mean, they're a chatty group. They're always curious about each other's bakes, and they're just all a whole bunch of kind, nice people, and so what happens naturally is they go visit each other, they check in on each other, they help each other out, and we're just there. I mean, I do think in a lot of ways we're kind of the doc of the competition.
Yeah.
We're telling you the story of the competition as opposed to really being the competition.
We're not setting it up. We're letting them loose and they're doing it. We're just telling you what happened.
So just to peel back the curtain, how do the crew keep themselves, I want to say like self-care because it's a long shoot day. So what are the kind of things the crew get up to when they have a moment to kind of take care of themselves, if they can?
Well, I mean, the thing is, the tent crew for us, I'm always on the tent floor as well, which is unusual for these shows, but I'm always on the tent floor. So the tent crew has things probably the most intense because we're filming those challenges. When we have long challenges, we kind of bring the cameras down so that people can take breaks. It gets hot in there. We have air conditioning, but it doesn't.
I was going to say for Canadian in particular, like the heat level, and you can see it in some of those challenges. It's just like a really hot place at times.
So good on you for bringing in air conditioning to at least try and stave that off a bit.
We try. The problem is that when we launch the bakes, when there's the lines from the hosts launching and during tastings, we have to turn the air conditioning off because it interferes with the dialogue. And so that is when people are, camera guys, and those cameras are hot. They just emit heat right next to their heads. So those guys are, they're really sweating during the tastings specifically and all cameras are a go. But when we're shooting the bakes, they spell each other off and they can go somewhere cooler, and we get nice cucumber ice water. And
I was just expecting a little plunge pool out the back, like just into the pool.
That would be nice. But
give you ideas.
Just a blow up pool out the back. Just the camera crew in there, in their jocks, and their undies.
So not to ask a difficult question then, but have you got a favourite challenge that you've ever set?
Favorite challenge? Oh, good question. I really did like the sandwich cakes. I just got a note about it today about how weird it was. I'm like, I was so into those cakes. They were so bizarre. And I think somebody described, I think it was Julia who described the smell in the tent as like bread and raw fish. And they,
that's what happens when one's coated in salmon icing.
I really like that. And there's quite a few of the technicals that I really like. And, you know, I think the technicals are, it's funny, our show, I think between the UK and the Australian show, because your show is an hour, we're the shortest show. We're only 44 minutes. And our technical is 6 minutes, maybe? It's really short.
Yeah.
And we pack a punch with that challenge, I'll tell you. So
yeah. I mean, I've made fun of it a lot, but I loved the Creme Caramel. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And I liked it as well because one of the things I think that because of the way the show is filmed and the way everyone comes across, there are lots of people who sit at home looking at it and I think sometimes go, oh, that looks really easy to do. I could do that. And it's good to occasionally have one of those challenges where everything goes wrong. So if everyone that sits home goes, actually, no, I couldn't do that. And I think Creme Caramel was a really good one because people at home are going, oh, Creme Caramel, that sounds really easy. And when we spoke to, Robert Harwood from Australian Bake Off, and we asked him about, he goes, that's much harder than anyone. It's a different type of custard than they've ever made. It's a different consistency.
Yeah.
They're going to be used to making this, not this. Yeah. And that's going to be where the problem comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that one took us by surprise, actually. We thought it would work out, but it didn't.
It's always the one that you expect to work out. I mean, in Australia, the one that tripped over one series was jam drops, which is, literally just normal biscuit, jam in the middle. And I was, how hard could that be? Apparently impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think also, it depends on the instructions too. And I think that they just, were flummoxed where it was like, okay, just make it.
So
we told them, make it.
So we've noticed that Canadian is the most brutal in terms of limiting the instructions. Is that you? Is that your, or who's the evil mastermind behind that?
Well, it's a little bit of both, but I don't think so. I mean, I've looked at the UK one and we've modeled things on them and they're pretty tough. The thing is that their challenges are longer. So maybe you see more of them succeeding than failing, whereas ours, because they're so short, it's just like giant failure. So yeah, I never really thought ours was that harsh, but
well, we love it. Don't change a thing.
No.
Do not.
It's perfect. Because again, it's good to see, like make a roux. And you're like,
okay.
I know how to do that. That's easy. And then you get other people, how do you? I've never made that before. I don't know how to do that. Or make a sweetened dough. Which one? And then you see but it's good because you get to see then verbally the process of them working through. Well, this is what the bake is. And so you get to see their ability and skill level in the technical, which is why we love that.
And that I think is the point of the technical in this format. And that's what's so clever about that challenge is that it really is about revealing those skills, right? You can practice and you do your thing, but how do you do when you're just handed a recipe and you got to figure it out? And that's what was so interesting about Megan in season 2 was that she knew how to do stuff and she had a good, instinct about stuff. And I think she ended up winning 5 out of 8 technicals. I remember giving her a chart and I said, here, this is for you to keep. This is your souvenir. Like a whole chart of like Megan's wins,
So cool.
And it was impressive. Her skill was impressive. And that mochi, that was actually one of my favorite challenges. That mochi challenge was hilarious. And, mingling in that challenge, there was stuff on the cutting room floor where it is like, you couldn't, she just unraveled, I mean, she's so lovely mingling, but that challenge.
Inspector
Gadget. Oh, I love her so much. I need to check up and see how her dog's going.
Nimbus, yeah.
Yeah.
Need to check in on Nimbus. Yes, no, and I mean, they did a very good job, obviously, with Mengling of hiding, Penny and Brain, obviously, because as we said, she was Inspector Gadget with people in the earpieces. So love Mengling. So obviously, then moving forward into the next series. I mean, have you started to build your grid?
It's like, it's got to go through a number of levels. I am just starting now. I'm trying to figure out a few themes, and then we're going to try and
isolation.
Isolation makes.
That's right.
COVID-19 week.
That's right. Pandemic baking.
Here's one from the Spanish flu.
Your technical challenge is whatever happens to be in your pantry.
Yes, exactly. Pandemic week. I think we're going to do it.
And there's no flour, there's no yeast, but you need to make bread.
And my one budget related question about the show, and it's my only budget related question about the show, is how much of the budget goes on booze? Because alcohol in bakes, it's a surefire winner.
Well, I don't know. I mean, listen, there's an ingredient team, and they have a budget, and they get what they need to get.
So, I've just got this idea in my head that the crew's like, so when we finish filming, what do you want to drink? Okay, cool. So can we have a bake that involves this, and this?
Some vermouth, some vodka, and some olives.
Yeah. Well, we do have on sets. I don't know what you call it on the Australian sets, but on our sets, it's called the bodega. So at the end of a shoot period, when we're, let's say, going on a hiatus, or there won't be any shooting for 4 or 5 days, anything that's going to spoil is put out for the crew to descend on and
enjoy,
take home and not waste. And so we do have bodega, but somehow booze never makes it on the bodega table.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't it amazing how that works? The booze never seems to make it out there.
It was like a few gnarly carrots and a lot of onions.
Like, nobody made a carrot cake again. We keep trying.
Yeah, but you can go home and make onion rings and a bloomin' onion. It'd be great.
And a bloomin' carrot.
Maybe you should have a Commonwealth week, and because you could, like, a bloomin' onion is battered.
No. We've put forward the Commonwealth Games concept a few times. So, and that's something we're looking at. So
one day.
Yeah, one day. It is in the planning. It is in our future planning, because we've got pull apart. No.
It's part of, I don't know about, and I know other people do it, but when you go, if I won the lottery, and like we're talking like a big lottery, not just your normal size, I would host a Commonwealth Games of baking, and just bring everyone together to bake, and I'd host it in the Sydney Olympic Stadium, because why the fuck not?
Yeah,
you should.
You guys are doing Pride as well. I heard there's like a baking Pride float going down.
Jay's at the forefront of that one.
Yeah, because Sydney's hosting World Pride 2023, is it?
Yeah, 2023.
There you
go. Yeah. So we've talked about the idea of a baking Pride float, and Jay's like, I'm there, I'm on it. So he's leading the charge. The last thing I want to talk about before we obviously wrap up with you as well is you talked about Canada being such a diverse and multicultural country. Yeah. How important has that been in terms of just representing that level of diversity within sort of Canada? Because you seem to cover it
beautifully,
absolutely beautifully.
You know what? For me personally, on a personal level, it's really important to me. I feel like if you don't ever see yourself on TV, you don't know that you could belong there.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm really interested in having more and more people from diverse backgrounds apply. We really encourage it. We saw, when Sadia, came forward and applied, we were so delighted to meet her and for her to share her culture with us. And what her being on the show did is it opened the door for other people from her culture to come and apply as well. And so, that's one of the trickiest things, is it's hard for us to cast people if they don't apply.
Yep.
And a lot of diversity is in the big cities. And so, it's just trying to get the idea across that, Canada looks all different. It's not all white folks. And yeah, so really, I really would like to have people from diverse backgrounds. You know, we had Jody, who's Indigenous.
Yeah.
And we've had, you know, Colin, who's Filipino, and we love that they bring their culture with them and they put them into their bakes. And I think it's really important. It's really meaningful.
And you had that, and obviously again, that like the first season as well, you had like Vandana and Sabrina obviously, you know, winning it. And just very early on, there was this bold representation across the board, and it's just expanded. And we said like Jody with maybe native, and then obviously, you know, Chris, and you know, just the range of different backgrounds and cultural beliefs. And Chris brought a lot of his culture back in. And
Megan with the goths, you know.
Yeah, Megan representing goths. The goth farmers, Andrea mermaids. I mean, you've managed to cover, you know, Jay rugby players.
Exactly.
And Liam the caribou. So yeah, wide and diverse background of people.
But what I loved about Sadia's baking was like, because Sydney is also extremely multicultural where we're from, and you know, my brother-in-law is Lebanese, so watching her cook, I'm like, oh, I remember going to like trying that stuff for the first time, like that, those different spices and the bakes, and it just reminds me of how lucky we are to be in a society that is so diverse. And you know, when you see it on TV, it's good for representation, it's good for people to see who they are, but it's also opening the doors to people who might not have been exposed to trying something new and stepping out of their comfort zone.
Because food's often the way forward.
Yeah,
exactly. And the other thing that I think is nice about the show, and I remember this moment in season 1, is that Canada itself, it's a very, very wide country, and you know, we have multiple time zones, and I always think that's one of our issues here, where we can't quite get everybody lined up the way they have it in the UK, because they're all kind of on the same time zone. So if they're all watching the British Bake Off at the same time, it becomes a national thing, right? They're all doing it at the same time, and we have multiple time zones. And one thing that I remember on the first season was that Vandana turns around to Julian, she's from the prairies and he's from the coast, and he's making dulse, and he's like, what's dulse? And it's seaweed from Nova Scotia, and you know, you know, so it's not even, it's just people, even Canadians, getting to know each other.
Yeah.
They just didn't even know these flavors are there and all this. So it's not even, you know, we're all in Canada, so and we all have different flavors that we can represent, and it's so great for everybody to get to know each other that way. And that's why I just think it's, the more diverse and interesting our cast is, the more interesting the food is, the more interesting the show is.
From salmon icing to the wreck of the Titanic.
And like for me, like learning more Newfie slang, it's great.
Oh, that's not a pleasant moment for me. Your ability to develop Newfie slang has been pox on our house. But anyway, it has been an absolute delight to get to have this conversation with you. I'm going to ask a very loaded question. Do you have anything to plug or promote?
Well, if anybody's listening who's on the fence about applying to the Great Canadian Baking Show, don't dither. Get in there and apply. Mm-hmm. You have absolutely nothing to lose. And all the wonderful things we just talked about to gain. And, you know, we'd love, love, love to hear from people from across the country. I mean, we really try and represent as much of the country as we can. We've never had a northern baker, somebody from Yukon or Northwest Territories or Iqaluit. We've never had anybody from the north. Are
you sure they haven't been trying to make their way down and are still coming?
Lucky for you, our podcast is big in the Yukon.
Right?
In the Yukon.
I mean, baking's got to be big in the Yukon. It's so dark there.
Nowhere else to go. Yeah. It's dark outside. What time is it? Midday. Okay.
And go to, I think the website is cbc.ca/the Great Canadian Baking Show. Great Canadian Baking. Anyway, if you go on my Instagram profile, which is Magic Walnut, you can find the link. You can go to @CBC Baking Show on Instagram, and the Great Canadian Baking Show Facebook page.
Also, on Instagram as well, there's the bake along challenge and bake at home challenge, which is absolutely brilliant. I suggest very strongly get on board with that too. It's really good. Mm-hmm. That's been something that I think it was going obviously before isolation, but now it's become sort of even bigger with isolation and people looking for something to do.
Yeah. All the technical recipes are on the CBC website, and every day they're issuing a new challenge. So, make your roulades and your, I don't know, pommier.
Make creme caramel. Make creme caramel.
All of it.
Yeah.
That's my plug. That's all I've got to plug is the baking show.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege, Marike. I just love having you on.
Guys, I love. You know what? Your show is hilarious. It's so fun to hear your perspective on the show, and you're so supportive and kind, and it's just a real pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you for making a show that is so easy to watch, and again, like we watched the first episode sort of on a whim. And within, I think it was 20 minutes of watching, we looked at each other and went, "We're podcasting this. This is being added to the repertoire." And now it is legitimately the most popular series of Bake Off that we podcast in terms of people listening. Oh, wow. The most popular series. So Australians, you've got a bit of work to do.
Yeah. But pull up your game if you want to win that Commonwealth Games that I'll be holding, and I'm a multi-millionaire. But
no, it is legitimately the biggest downloaded of all of our Bake Off podcasts, and that says something. And it has genuinely, the other benefit of applying, obviously, is you can become a cult hero in Australia.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you want to be a cult hero in Australia?
You get to talk to us.
You get to talk to us.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for coming on. Obviously, we'll give more details as the series actually comes closer to fruition. Until next time, I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Kristie.
And we will catch you all later.
Goodbye.